All right, we got rejected. So what's next? Well, this is NC Hammer Crypto. My name's Neil. Let's talk about it. What we are currently looking at is Bitcoin. And if you've been in this channel for the past 100 videos, you probably should have a pretty good idea of what we're looking at. We mainly want to see some support off of this trend line somewhere in this area, as well as this 200 EMA. If we do get support off of this, we may see a little bit of consolidation like we did right here. A little bit of consolidation before testing this upward trend line. However, if it does break below that and push down, we could see maybe a little support off this orange line, which was the previous downward trend. So with that being said, if that does break, we could expect 97 being the next stop. However, if it does hold, which would be over the next couple of days, we could see some support in this pushback up towards this downward trend line, which we would want to be breaking and holding over this high. Keeping that in mind, we're moving on to GRT, also trying to build some support off this trend line, still needing to break this downward black trend line before we start seeing a potential entry in this area. QNT has been pulling back quite a bit, with Bitcoin's little bit of rejection being, I think it was 3% to 2.89%. Looking at Quant has gone down 10%. If you're scared or worried about Quant going down further, don't be. We could see this line break and hold, and if that does happen, the next stop would be around the $90 area. Keeping that in mind, you have to kind of do your risk versus reward ratio if you're selling at this loss. The percent loss from this point to here is around 19%, give or take. And the additional, you could say from here to here is 27% total. 27% is a pretty massive chunk of the money. However, when it does enter from here, to get that back, you obviously just need to make it back to the high. But if you were to enter down whenever it touches this point, if you have money saved up, you can gain an additional 40%, kind of covering your ass on the dollar cost averaging if you may have sold with a loss somewhere around here. But overall, compound, if it does touch this trend line around the 618, $85 to $90 mark, we could see some support. But keep in mind, in the 4 hour, we are also in the oversold in the RSI. So this may hold support because Bitcoin may hold support. That's mainly what we're working with the correlation on QNT. Compound getting rejected as well, but we don't mind that as we want to hold this trend line right here. If this maintains to be able to hold, we'll eventually see it curve back up towards 60. However, if this does break, we could be heading back down towards the $43 mark. Using Fibonacci ratio, here to here, 618, $48 mark. That's kind of what we're expecting. And then this could be the false bear breakout, where bears are trying to sell it for lower, and then it comes up, touches this point, breaks this trend line right here, and has a continuation upwards for compound. XRP still consolidating. Dollar cost average XRP for sure. It is on the 50% mark on the RSI in the 4 hour. And when you are looking at this on the daily, you can see that it had that push up. It's using this orange line as a stronger support. It's also at the 50 roughly in the RSI. So I believe we're going to see a little bit more consolidation for XRP, holding this orange support line and eventually pushing upwards. I believe Bitcoin may end up holding this trend line, making this a higher low, and then having a continuation upwards, pushing the rest of the market with it. However, keep in mind, if it breaks that, we could see a lower low. GRT, I feel like we went over GRT already. XCN XCN had that major pump whenever Bitcoin pumped, and you can see when you correlate the XCN profits compared to if you invested in Bitcoin, that pump is around 17, 18%. Going to Bitcoin, Bitcoin's pump was more or less 4%. So you get a lot more money whenever you're trading smaller tokens. And I highly recommend XCN. It's not financial advice, but I believe we are going to hold above this black trend line if Bitcoin decides to hold above its trend line. Seeing this dotted line as the 50% mark in between the wedge, we mainly want to see it test this support, push upwards back over the 200 EMA, also breaking this black downward trend line, and then we will see XCN start to take off. Also, if it does not, you could see a further drop down to 0.001, so keep that in mind. But overall, XCN is going to continue upwards when Bitcoin does its bull run. Keeping this in a downward channel, not a wedge, we can see that it's losing a little bit of momentum in the wave. When you're inverting this, it's a little bit easier to judge. You can see if it closes below this point, you're going to see a further decrease in price. Keep in mind this is inverted, but as we are pushing upwards, we are losing a little bit of steam. In this case, it's downwards. So we could consider this a little bit stronger support as it's touching that support multiple times without breaking it. But if that does break and hold around this area, we could see a little pushback up and continuation downwards. That's also keeping in mind Bitcoin starting to decrease in price. When we flip this back, you get a little bit better idea. This trend line is very important to hold. And then we have this entire channel to play with XYO. But also keeping in mind that its bottom is right around here, around 0.007. Pretty massive drop downwards. However, it can just be a shakeout and getting all the liquidity and pushing right back up into this downward channel. Tornado, I stocked up on a little bit more Tornado today just for dollar cost averaging. But we got in around 750. It has not come back down to that point yet. It's holding this black trend line, which is very nice to see, and also holding above the 200 EMA. You see once it gets below 200 EMA in the 4 hour, it shoots right back up over it, came back down, touched it, shot up, came down, tried to touch it again, and it cannot break this 200 EMA. There's a lot of support building up underneath Tornado Cash. So if we come up and touch this line again, if this breaks and holds, we are going to see a continuation for Tornado, keeping in mind its all-time high is over $495. Moving on to Ondo, which is a newer one I'm bringing in, as Ondo just partnered with Ripple. So I'm told with the news, and keeping this as the trend line. We don't want to break that black trend line. But we have not entered yet as we are below the 200 EMA. We are oversold, but volume is picking up exponentially right here. Moving out into the daily, we can see that it's getting pretty heavy volume now that it's trying to build some support. This could form that W pattern and have a continuation upwards back towards its all-time high around $2. But keeping that in mind, the percent profit compared to something like XCN, which is very reliable, this is 187% for that high, and XCN is, I believe, over 1,000% just to get to 10 cents. So that's kind of it for today. Actually, I'll bring in TOSHI for the last one. TOSHI is still heading sideways in consolidation, but trying to build a little bit more support. And you can see this is a trend line that we are trying to hold over. And we could also build another trend line from this point up, which is showing that it is breaking that trend line, but we do want to hold some support off of this one as well. Also keep in mind that it's a little oversold, but not too much. We could see this push back up towards the 50% mark, and with Bitcoin we could start seeing this push up over the 200 EMA, and once that holds support, breaks this area around 0.0006, we could consider that more bullish for TOSHI. That's it for today. Reference links in the link below for MEXC, where you can trade Tornado, and if you use the reference link, you get a free $20, which could pay for the signal channel, where I post signals prior to posting this on YouTube. Also, there's Grass Token, free airdrop money, Coinbase, free airdrop money, and Roller Coin, which is free passive income. Good luck and have fun with it.